Hi, it's Irene Weinberg, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. Before we get started with the episode, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching so you never miss an episode. Every week, we share heartfelt stories, spiritual insights, and practical guidance to help you navigate grief and trauma, find hope, and discover rebirth after loss. By subscribing, you'll get access to every episode and join our supportive community on this journey. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to welcome Jenny Brandemuehl, who is joining me from Mountain View, California. Jenny is the author of the national bestseller Forever Fly Free, one woman's story of resilience and the power of hope and love. Her gripping memoir that chronicles her extraordinary journey through unimaginable tragedy after a devastating plane crash left her husband Mark with burns over 80% of his body. Jenny's unwavering devotion, courage, and the profound love they shared became the force that carried them both through the darkest of days. Jenny, who was a respected executive in the tech and fashion industries, suddenly found herself stepping into the roles of caregiver, medical advocate, and emotional anchor as Mark fought through months of surgeries, setbacks, and triumphs. She stood by him through every moment of that battle. And after his passing in October 2019, she faced the profound challenge of rebuilding a life shaped by grief, healing, and rediscovery. Today, Jenny is a dedicated advocate for burn survivors. She donates proceeds from her book to the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors and speaks widely on mental health, trauma, and the quiet power of intuition. She is also a passionate advocate for the empowerment of women leaders, having served on the board of directors for Women's Initiative for Self-Employment in Oakland, California, and Wesley College's Business Leadership Council. I'm looking forward to talking with Jenny, who, by the way, is a delight, about how Mark's accident reshaped her understanding of love, presence, and purpose. How grounding ourselves in purpose can steady us in the face of overwhelming grief. What unprocessed grief can do to us, and how she rebuilt her identity after her profound loss. This promises to be a deeply moving conversation, one that will remind us that even in our darkest chapters, an inner compass can still guide us both through calm waters and the fiercest of storms. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, Jenny. A truly warm, heartfelt welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Irene. It just feels so good to be here with you today.
I think not only are we going to have a great conversation, but I mean, your story is absolutely amazing. But I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from what we have to share.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning in a way. Could you tell us all about Mark, your 31-year marriage and that plane crash, and what those first few days taught you about love, presence, and purpose? I mean, what a tragedy happened.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mark and I had a near perfect life together. I mean, I was on a happy autopilot and we were about to retire, and we both had given notice in our jobs. And that June, what was it, June of 2019, Mark said, I'm going to Scottsdale. I'm going to the Mayo Clinic to get a one-day executive health checkup. get a clean, I want to know if I have a clean bill of health before I retire. And so he decided to fly his private plane to Scottsdale. And the day before, he called me and said, everything's great. My heart health is great. And then he got on the flight the next day, and 7 minutes after takeoff, declared an emergency and a rough running engine. And he tried to emergency land on a 2-lane road, but there were 3 drivers. And because they were in the way and he didn't want to hit them, he swerved right, but then it caused his plane to lose balance. And the right wing clipped 2 light poles, caught on fire, flipped upside down, hit a concrete barrier, and he landed face down in a burning plane. The amazing thing was a good Samaritan named Thomas Honeycutt happened to be driving by that day, and he saw what was happening, got out of the car and said to himself, he was angry, all these people are filming, and if somebody doesn't go out and rescue the pilot, he's going to die. And so in that moment, he went running out, and he told me later, I was thinking to myself, Jenny, if your husband's seatbelt was still on him, I wouldn't be able to rescue him. And do you know, he said, I got up to the cockpit window, I saw him, he was on fire, the plane was on fire, and he saw his seatbelt melt off of Mark's body right in that moment. And by the way, later I heard from another eyewitness, another woman who was there before Thomas, and she said, I was so frantic, I didn't know what to do. I heard him yelling for help, and I start praying for him. And when we pieced it all together, the timing was that she was praying the same time Thomas got to the cockpit, and his seatbelt melted off, and he pulled him out on one try and got some help and carried him to safety across the road, and then the plane exploded.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and by the way, Thomas later was awarded the Carnegie Hero Award. They only give that to 4 people a quarter in this country who put their own life at risk to rescue someone else. And so he's a true hero and a part of my family now. And through all of that, I think it was just a miraculous rescue. And he was considered a hero because he put his own life at risk to not hit the 3 drivers that were coming down the road.
Amazing.
So,
Well, tell me, here you're hit with all of this. I mean, my God, I know you talk about in the book about everything that hit you and what you had to do and all. What helped you remain steady amid all this chaos and uncertainty, which kind of anchored you in purpose as you faced this overwhelming grief? I mean, oh my God.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, what happened, it was a shock, right? I mean, my life changed in an instant, and everything was going so well. Anyway, he came out of this with 80% of his body 3rd-degree burned. And burn is the worst human trauma, physical trauma a person can go through. And so we spent 5 months at the Arizona Burn Center, and I basically moved to Phoenix and rented an Airbnb. And during that time, Irene, back to your question, I took it a day at a time, a moment at a time. I had to. If I were, I think of the Eckhart Tolle quote, don't dwell on the past, don't overthink the future. And it was the first time I was really challenged to understand what that meant, because I would drive myself crazy if I tried to think about the future too much. And it was an emotional roller coaster for 5 months. He went through leg amputations, finger amputations, sepsis, fungal infection that he nearly died from. We thought he might die the first 2 weeks. And I think miracle after miracle happened. And so I think the other piece of this was not only just living in the moment and taking it a step at a time, but it's also having hope. And so one of the things that I've learned and I've carried forward in my life, it's been 6 years now, is that I believe hope and love are both incredibly powerful. And for me, the doctors at the Burn Center modeled hope, which is they never said never, they never said always. They always said, look, here's the scenario. He's got a fungal infection. Here are the 3 options and scenarios, right? And I really started to understand my definition of hope is it is not about expectation, but it's holding a belief in possibilities. And so we can talk about this later, but when I went through my own grief journey, I always had hope that my life would be good again.
That's beautiful. Well, and you were always so powerful and strong in your career and everything. And this must have been a whole new learning to allow yourself to receive help and cultivate that healing power of love and community to create the scaffolding you needed to survive this huge loss. Was that, am I right about that? Was that a
Yeah,
big
so
adjustment
it's
for you?
yeah, so it's interesting, Irene. On the one hand, I was a leader my whole career, so I took charge. Met with the doctors, I stayed on top of facts. I said, "I've got Mark needs me." He is in a medically induced coma, by the way, and so I represent him, and I've gotta do a good job. I can't let him down. And at the same time, I'd been a private person when I had tough times in my life. But here I was in Phoenix, away from California and my whole network of support. And so I started posting on one of these caregiver online communities to friends and family. And what started out as medical updates every day turned into me pouring my heart out, talking about how Mark and I met, how much we loved each other, all the things I hoped that we could get back to. He loved to cook. We loved to travel. He was a double black diamond skier.
Wow.
And I talked about all of this. And all of a sudden, my son, who was the administrator, says, "Mom, do you know that there are over 500 people following your posts every day?"
Wow.
And by the way, later, after I came home to California, people told me they'd been forwarding my posts to
Wow.
their faith communities, their synagogues, their churches. We had thousands of people following my posts and praying for us. And I felt that love. I felt that love. It opened up a portal of love that I never expected, Irene. You know, I'm a very self sufficient person. Mark and I were both oldest born kids in our family. We didn't know how to ask for help, we helped everybody else.
Right. Right.
Right. And so this was humbling and also awe inspiring in terms of how much people reached out to me and gave me support. And one of the things I always say now is be vulnerable, allow yourself to feel the full cycle of emotions without judgment. Because when you can open up and really show who you really are and what you're struggling with, it invites other people to help. Otherwise, you shut them out, and there's more to that whole topic,
Right.
but that was my first inkling,
Right.
and I found that it was generative that, for example, Mark went to Stanford Business School. His classmates rallied, and they started having within their own community conversations about health scares, you know, people in their family who'd passed away, and what was the meaning of life. And you
Wow.
just don't expect that of a bunch of Stanford MBAs, right? They're CEOs and CFOs, and they can talk more about, you know, where to find a business development consultant and how to raise money. And I was really pleasantly surprised by how they just came through for us.
Well, you're reminding me of the first message I got 2 months before our accident,
Mm,
which a voice came into my head and said, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And you have this, we have so many similarities because this
yeah.
is very similar. The whole class of Stanford were learning lessons from this. It was
Yes.
opening their hearts, it was changing things.
Yes.
So, we always, or most of us, I think, concentrate on the minutia of what's going on, and especially when we're under this cloud and we don't see the bigger picture, but there is a
Mhm.
bigger picture. You contributed to it, we contributed to it, and all of that. So another question I want to ask you, as he was not thriving all the time, did you start navigating questions like, who am I without my soulmate? Who am I? What am I going to do? And how did you start practicing compassion for yourself to rebuild your identity and rediscover yourself? You were going through so much.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Irene, it's interesting. During my 5 months at the Burn Center, I never gave up hope. Hope is so powerful, and it propelled me forward to always think about, okay, he's lost his legs, he's lost partial
Ugh.
fingers. It was always thinking about, you know, he was such a lover of life. And so I had the hope that he would learn adaptive skiing. I was always busy trying to talk to the nurses about, what do you think he could do? What can he not do? What can he do? What can I do? You know, I was just really proactive about that. And I think it was only after he died suddenly, and in my story, this is what I talk about in the book, is that after 5 months, he suddenly caught a hospital infection that was resistant to antibiotics, and he was gone in 24 hours.
Wow.
And it was a huge shock. Our whole family, our friends,
Wow.
everyone thought he was going to make it. And then I had to face the question you brought up, which is, who am I without my soulmate of 31 years? Right?
Right.
Who am I? We raised our children together. We had what I'd call a startup marriage as opposed to a merger marriage. We met early in our first jobs out of college. And so we kind of molded each other, right, through life. And he was the person I spent the most time in my life together
Right.
closely. So that was when I had to really face that
So
question.
you really have to face it, and all of this is going on.
Mhm.
And you also talk about that it's important not to repress your negative emotions when you're
Mhm.
going through something like that. So, actually, with these 2 questions, I wanna kinda zoom in on. You went through so much, you're busy dealing with all of this, and you had what you call the sunrise moment, which
Yeah.
provided you with this emotional shift
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
helped you. Could you share that with us? Because here you're going
Yeah.
through all this heavy, heavy, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
You must have
You
felt you'll never be free from it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this earlier, Irene. I realized I still had the capacity to see beauty in the world and to find the small joys. That started at the Burn Center. Arizona is a very different place than California, but I began to see the beauty in the desert mountains when I'm driving by. I try to go for hikes. I tried to get out. I think I just found those moments, along the way, wherever I could find them. And it really, really helped me, and it continued to carry me forward after Mark died because, he died end of October 2019, and guess what? COVID hit in February
Ugh,
2020. And all of a sudden, I'm in my grief journey isolated. My oldest son was living with me at the time looking for a job, but right, we had all those restrictions. And you know what? The silver lining of that time was I was forced to face my emotions. My tendency is to run away. Oh, I'm going to go to Europe. Oh, I'm going to go travel. Oh, I'm going to go see family. Anything but stay at home. And I was stuck at home. I was stuck at home, and I knew that I had to face the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what I say a lot to people who are going through grief is don't hold back. In fact, let me tell you, there was this amazing documentary I saw during that time of a Polynesian country where a young man had just died. And there must have been hundreds of people who took to the street to memorialize him. And these young men who were friends of his in the community, they're shouting, they're crying, you could feel the energy. And I thought, we just don't know how to deal with grief in this country, right? In most of the Western
which is
world.
one of the reasons for this podcast, because people do not
Yeah.
deal with their feelings. They kind of, have a tendency to bury them.
Yes, yes. And people don't know what to do with you, right? I mean, part of this is when you're that raw and honest about your feelings, which I was. And I highly encourage people to go there because it helps your healing process faster. Some people are uncomfortable with that. And as I transformed and changed, Martha Beck has this great analogy about the friends in life, the friends and family in life as your elevator, your personal elevator. There are times in your life when you're going through such a big change that some people are going to choose to get off your personal elevator. And
Right.
that's okay because it makes room for new friends to step in. And at some point, those friends and family that stopped off may come back into the elevator at a future point. And that happened for me as well.
Oh, your relationships change, and I experienced that
Yes.
also. I actually look at things. I have this favorite expression that I picked up somewhere, that some people are for a reason, some for a season, and some for a lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, I love
So you
that.
had friends like I did who were there for that reason and that season, but then now your life changed and now you add some new people. And I also know that you did some healing modalities, and I want to ask you about that. You went for professional support from a grief coach, and you had your spiritual practices and your community care, but you also used healing modalities such as letter writing, you
Mm,
visited a psychic medium, and
yeah,
you did energy healing. So can
yeah.
you talk to, and you practice something called heart coherent meditation.
Yeah, yeah.
So can you, like, give us this whole,
Yeah.
because none of us can get through all of this all by ourselves. We need
Right. We
support.
need help. We all need help, right? We weren't meant to be alone. right? In our healing journey. Healing happens in community. One of the things I did do is also join a spouse partner grief support group during that time. And they were my lifeline for a year and a half because they walked a mile in my own shoes, right?
Right.
But in addition to that, I did quite a bit of work around intergenerational trauma healing. It triggered a lot of questions all of a sudden in my mind about how my family shaped the way I coped, which was I learned that I love the strong me, but not the weak me. And let me kind of give you the story about that. If I look at the 4 stages I went through, the first stage was shock. The second, and they're not linear, by the way, they're overlapping circles, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. First
Yes.
stage was shock. The second stage was, who am I? Who am I without my beloved husband, right? And then the third stage was I was forced to grow. I mean, I had to grow. There's this great quote, I'm going to read it here so I don't mess it up, from Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
That's absolutely true.
Right.
So
And
true.
so I was forced to go through transformation. And then the fourth was I had somatic healing I had to go through that I'm still working through this year.
Can you explain to people who are saying, what is somatic healing that she did?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I realized is that my nervous system was stuck in fight or flight. And it was made that much worse by going through the trauma of what happened to Mark. And when I was referred to, I went to consult with a medical intuitive in Arizona who's also been one of my several spiritual advisors. And she said, why don't you go see this chiropractic neurologist? I think he could really help you with your nervous system issues and I was having migraines and vertigo, and I've had them for 15 years and they were getting worse. And so I went to see Dr. Teams, and you know what? In the intake, he said to me, I can get you most of the way there, Jenny, but the rest of it is emotional work. And it will take you loving yourself to fully heal. And I said, well, Dr. Teams, I love myself. I had a great dad. I was really close to my father. My mom was emotionally up and down a lot, but I had a great dad and I had a great childhood. And then the next day I thought about it and I thought, oh my God, I love the strong me. I don't love the weak me at all. In fact, I don't like the weak. I'm very conditional about
You
my
were
love for
very, very
myself.
judgmental of yourself.
Absolutely. That a very harsh inner critic was a part that was in me. And so it was so fascinating. I went to 2 months of treatment at the clinic. I moved to Phoenix for a couple of months with my partner. And then I came home and I saw a medium in Oregon. And she was referred to me because Dr. Team said part of your process of healing is you got to go see my hypnotherapist. The hypnotherapist said, you know what? I think you should go see this medium I'd recommend. I feel like maybe we have some stuckness here. I met with the medium and she said, Jenny, you're transitioning to who you really were meant to be in terms of your higher self. And you've learned so much about trusting your intuition. And now, how do we kind of get you over the finish line to being that way more consistently? And I said, I understand that, but I don't know how to get there. Like in theory, I got it. So I came home and I found a book. I walked into a bookstore and there was this book by Nicole Sachs called
What a
Your Body.
coincidence.
Isn't it interesting? And it was the first book. I didn't even go into the bookstore to go get a book. I was looking for a card, a condolence card for a friend. And I walk in, turn to the left, and this book
There
just
it
jumped
is.
out at me right on the stand. And it gave a 45-day journey on how to calm your nervous system down through journaling. And I'm a writer. You know, my second act was to be a writer, and that was what I was planning to do in retirement. Anyway, so she has a journey, 3 columns. Write about all the things that upset you in childhood, because her theory and view is that when you suppress your negative emotions, and perfectionists tend to do this, people pleasers, people who are hard on themselves, high achievers usually, they suppress the negative emotions, and it's got to come out in your body somehow. And it manifests in many ways, migraines, IBS, all of that. Anyway, so I did the 45-day journey protocol, which was to write about childhood events, write about your personality, and write about daily stressors. And I did this systematically for 45 days. I've been doing
Wow.
this now for 7 months. Wow. And my migraines and vertigo have subsided, and it is absolutely nervous
Amazing.
system driven. And here I was thinking I had some kind of diagnosis that required medication or going to see a vestibular therapist. And so it's just by way of explaining this as an example of how there are many chronic pain issues that people have that could actually be caused by a nervous system dysfunction. And I had a diagnosis around that. So part of it for me is letting go of the strong me and to love all of me.
Yeah, you're a package girl. You're not just one end of it.
That's
It's
right.
I often, what's that expression that Oprah would say? When someone shows you who they are, believe them, but sometimes we only see a slice of who they are.
Right. And they
Or
may
s
not, or you don't even know those parts of you. I said one of the things about going through the grief journey is you start to find friends in parts of you that you never knew existed, right? It's like finding rooms in the house that you've lived in for 30 years. And I learned so much about myself in terms of how much I buried and shoved under the rug in terms of anxiety, fear, and panic. And there was so much in childhood that, without going into the whole
Right,
story,
but how
I
wonderful that you were
learned.
able to uncover that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. And the other thing is, this might relate, some of your listeners might relate to this. My father came from a military family. And Dr. Teen said, when I told him that, he said, 'cause my grandfather was a general, he said, I had you pegged right from our first intake, Jenny, that you came from a military family. I said, how did you know? He said, you're so calm on the outside, but you're intense on the inside. And that's what I see in a lot of military kids. And I said, oh, how interesting. That's where, and I realized my dad was my role model for being stoic, strong, and in control.
Right. And tell me what was this heart coherent meditation that you
Oh, yeah. So you know, I have tried meditating for so many years before Mark's accident, and I have a monkey mind. I can't concentrate. Tried guided meditation. I tried everything, and I kind of gave up. And after he died, again, I'm isolated. The only few things you can do are outdoors, right? So I went skiing a lot. I love skiing. It's my happy place. So I thought to myself, I experienced the power of love when I was at the Burn Center. The amount of love I was on the receiving end of was just beyond measure, beyond anything I could ever expect of people. And it touched me so much. And I said, surely there is a way to have some kind of heart based, love based meditation, not just Buddhist version. And what do you know, Irene? This is back to funny synchronicities. I suddenly remembered Heart Math Institute in Boulder Creek, California. When I worked at Hewlett Packard 20 years ago, we brought them in to do stress management workshops and biofeedback. And I thought, well, I wonder what they're up to these days. And I Google them. I mean, it's been 20 years. And I find out they're teaching heart coherent meditation.
wow.
And it is exactly what I was looking for, which is love based meditation. And so, what I find the approach is where you focus on your heart. And they said, the heart sends more signals to the brain than the other way around, believe it or not. Your emotions and your emotional state affect how you function in the world. And they said, when you do heart coherent meditation, you're basically bringing your heart rhythm into the same resonance as Schumann's resonance. And they've done studies of couples across distances where when both of them or even one of them does heart coherent meditation and thinks of their partner with love and appreciation, that their heart rhythms synchronize. I mean, they have data on
Oh,
this.
beautiful.
They've also discovered this between people and their pets, their horses as well, and their dogs.
Is there a
And
specific
so
meditation or a certain specific wording that goes with this heart
I
coherent
think it's
meditation?
actually so simple, Irene. I'll just paraphrase it because I've led people through this on in a session I did a few months ago. You just put your hand on your heart and you do the usual breathing, whatever that might be for you, like 4 intakes, 4 out breaths, count to 4, out 4. And maybe I do 10 of them. And then I just start to visualize my heart pumping and that this is where all my love flows out of here. And what I do is my adaptation is I visualize someone or a place that I love. And I'm there. I close my eyes. And then I think to myself, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I touch and feel? And what do I smell? And I think you're instantly transported into a place of love. And I found that it took me places that I never expected. So
Wow.
the first few times I did this up in Lake Tahoe, it was snowing. It was February of 2021, I think. And the snow was just coming down. And I saw a white owl flying towards me in a white light. And I thought, holy moly, all the times I've tried to meditate, I have never seen anything, right? And I remember thinking, I want to find a soulmate again. Will I ever find a soulmate again? And I heard the owl say to me, you will once you establish a daily spiritual practice.
Wow, wow, wow.
And I'm like, wow. And by the way, right before I had the meditation, I read an article by Oprah where she said, you know what? If you have a monkey mind, try this. Start in January and meditate for 1 minute. And then every successive month, like in February, add another minute. So by 12 months, by December, you're meditating 12 minutes a year. And I thought, well, I can do that. I'm going to do that. Then I tried and I saw the white owl. And this is what that white owl told me.
Wow.
And, a year later, I met my partner, Robert, who is my second soulmate.
That's wonderful. I wonder if, but they talk about spirit animals or whatever. I wonder if the owl is your spirit.
Yeah. Well, birds are in general. Once
Yeah.
when Robert and I were unsure about where our relationship was going because it was long distance, he's from Southern California and up north. I heard meditation, patience, Jenny, patience. And I thought, it was still early in all of this messaging. Am I hearing things? And do you know, the next morning I went to pull my garbage bin back into the side yard and there was a black feather on the ground.
Oh,
And it was a blackbird that spoke to me in meditation, by the way. And I
that's
said,
fantastic.
well, I think that was a confirmation of my little skeptical type A mind.
Right. I think your type A mind was being taught that there was so much more that meets our eyes and our senses. So much more. So when we're talking about signs and synchronicities, and you've been guided by many of them, how do you advise people listening to us to trust their inner compass to guide them through different stages of life?
Yeah, I think first of all, having a regular practice like I start to establish of finding inner stillness. However, people want to do that. I feel like there's not a prescription for that, right? For some people, it can be going for a walk in nature for 20 minutes. For others, it may be sitting in a chair and meditating, whatever works for you. Our world is so always on digitally that you got to just shut that stuff out, right, on a regular basis and build that boundary. And then I have found that either I'll see an image or I'll hear something. And what I have learned about the inner voice, and by the way, I don't think it matters what you attribute it to. Because I remembered asking myself, because it happened at the burn center, is it God? Is it me? Is it intuition? It doesn't really matter, right? I think it's that when you hear it, it's a quiet voice, it's emphatic, and it's very few words.
That's how I experienced it.
Direct, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's your
very
experience
direct.
too, Irene. And so, let me give you an example. Again, because Robert and I were still working through lots of things over the last 3 years to be together. We hadn't seen each other in a while. I was in Lake Tahoe and I was going for a walk. He was going to fly in that afternoon and I was anxious. I was like, I don't know where this
Course.
relationship is going, And so I'm going for a walk. I had my earbuds on and I heard a voice and it was Mark. He said, take your earbuds off, Jenny. And he said it in an irritated way, the way he used to when I'd be on my phone while we're watching Netflix. And I go, what happened? What happened? And he'd say, get off your phone. Why do I have to? Yeah, it was the same annoyed tone. Get off your earbuds, Jenny. So I took my earbuds off and I said, yeah. And he says, just love him.
Oh my God.
And I said, oh my God, I'm hallucinating. They're going to think I'm that crazy hiker lady. And I look around the trail and there's no one around me. No one's talking to me. I put my earbuds in. I think, God, I think that was Mark. And I walked 2 blocks, Irene. I kid you not. I have gone on this walk for 20 years, and I never saw that. I always turned left, and it was a different street name on the right. And I looked to the right, and it said Robert Avenue.
Oh,
My partner's name is Robert. And then we had a joyful reunion. He showed up, and then he left. And when I was driving home from Lake Tahoe 2 weeks later, I saw a little car go by, a Toyota Yaris, with a license plate that said Maxwell, and it was his last name. I mean, Maxwell isn't that common. And then a week later, he drives near LAX and he sends me a photo, and he's just gone by Jenny Avenue, no U-turn. I mean, how
wow,
many more
wow.
signs did I need to confirm what I heard from Mark? But that's what I mean.
Amazing.
It's just to the point, short and sweet.
You know, it is to the point and it's short and sweet. I experienced the same thing. But I also want to say to all of you listening that through all the interviews I've heard, I've experienced over and over and over, people say that when our loved ones get to the other
Yeah.
side, there is no jealousy there. All they want is your happiness.
Yeah.
And it does not interfere with the relationship you had with them. You will see them, you will celebrate each other when it's your time to cross over. But they don't experience all those earthbound emotions anymore, and they see the bigger picture. So I absolutely believe that Mark had your best interests at heart. He approved of who Robert was, and he wanted you to be happy, and that absolutely validates what I've been taught also, or what I've heard about. But
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. That is my experience as well, that I know that Mark has a benevolent presence in my life. And, he's shown himself to Robert, my partner.
wow,
And so even more, we both know that we've been guided to each other because Robert has, like, Mark said to Robert, she loves to laugh. She loves to laugh. And by the way, Robert's really funny. He makes me laugh every day.
very important.
So I believe for sure, given my experiences, that our energy continues to thrive and continue after
Abs
physical death on this earth, right? And that we
and
were,
absolutely, I know this for a fact. I tell people all the time, I'm no longer afraid to die. I'm just passionate about living life well and taking care of myself
yeah,
to the last drop. That's it,
yeah,
because I know that they will all
yeah,
greet us and we will be with them again.
right. I
So
totally see it that way too, Irene. And you know what? It's my experience. It's not research. I've heard from Mark, and multiple friends have heard from Mark since he died.
that's fantastic and so validating. And I want to ask you about a statement that you make that I think is so important. You say, you don't heal to forget, you heal to live.
Yeah, yeah,
So, how is healing not about getting over grief, but about learning to live fully with it
yeah.
and allowing it to transform you? Because in this process, you have to give up a lot of those old feelings of control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think grief can transmute to love. I keep coming back to the topic of love. I have decided love is the center of everything that's good in the world, and that it's powerful. It's not, I always say this, it's an energy, not just an emotion. And I think that when you go through extreme loss and traumatic loss too, you tap a really deep well in you of love and empathy in a way, like I cherish love and the people in my life so much more than I did before. It's a deeper
Absolutely.
appreciation, and also the transformative power of love. And so, one of the stories I talk about in my book is Mark and I had a beautiful relationship. We loved each other. We adored each other. One day, I was at the doctor's, and a burn survivor has to go through a big ordeal around a dressing change. You have to stay very sanitary and clean so you don't get infection, and it can take 2 to 3 hours. And so, Mark apparently was anxious. He was still sort of semi-comatose. The nurse actually called me. It was a younger nurse in her 20s who called me at the doctor and said, "Hey, Mark is really anxious and he was asking for you." do you mind if I put him on speakerphone? I said, absolutely. And that is going above and beyond for a nurse. Usually the nurse will say, oh, don't worry, Mark, don't be, your wife's coming in 3 hours. She'll be here at noontime.
That's a
And
beautiful, loving
instead,
thing.
she called me and I could say, honey, and he couldn't speak. I said, I love you. I'll be there soon. You're doing great today. And it was just wonderful. Anyway, so I talked to the nurse later, said, why did you do that? That was so kind of you. Most people wouldn't. And she said, the love that I have seen between the two of you is greater than anything I've experienced in my life or in the hospital. And I have decided that I'm raising the bar for who I'm actually going to start crying when I tell this story. I'm going to raise the bar for who I want to marry and date in the future because of what I saw between the two of you. And do you know, Irene, after Mark died, this nurse, young nurse, got in touch with me and she said, after that incident, I started dating Daniel, the guy who took care of Mark. He was the nurse who took care of Mark the day he died. And he was one of the kindest nurses there. And just two really good human beings that got together and that they're now engaged. She said, we're engaged. And when we're ready to get married, I want you to come have front row seats because you were such a big part of our story. So you know what I learned, Irene? That is an example of how what we think is death and loss can lead to birth of love. Loss of love never goes away. So we never forget because their loving presence is always with us, even if they're not physically here, but they are energetically always with us. And the goal is not to forget in healing. The goal is to move forward and to find new memories and new experiences.
That's so true. And I want to add something else to that. If you believe, and we all do, that we're part of a collective and we're influencing each other.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize what we're doing. So think about how your love influenced her. Now her love is going to influence so many people who will experience her. And that's how it absolutely works. And while we're talking about your book, is there anything else you would like to tell everyone about? Your book is wonderful, award-winning and everything. Is there anything else you'd like people to know before they run out and get it?
Yeah. I think people have told me, readers have told me it's an inspiring book. And so I just want anyone who would decide to pick it up to know that if you're navigating a difficult chapter in your life, and it doesn't have to be exactly what happened to me, that there's so much in there that I think you may resonate with and see a part of yourself in terms of what could help you navigate the breadcrumbs through your own lost journey or your difficult times, whatever that is.
I could also see people gifting it to people who are going through tough times.
Yeah.
Look what she was able to overcome, and there's some good stuff in here for you,
Absolutely.
It's really great. And I want to ask you also, you say that micro moments of joy are tiny but powerful reminders that life is still beautiful even in pain. How did those small sparks of joy help you build this emotional endurance we're seeing during this season, this terrible season, and so we're sort of touching on it, opened the door back to joy.
Yeah. I can't talk about that without saying that writing and journaling can really help you get to that place of stillness. But I think when you can catch yourself in those moments during the day, which is, for me, nature has always been very healing. And I found it played a bigger and bigger role for my healing. And so I never used to notice birds. I started to notice birds everywhere, Irene. The beauty of birds in flight, the mountains.
So think about this. You were skiing in these gorgeous mountains with the birds and you never really saw them.
I never noticed them. It's like I had new lenses to see the world in. And I think it's when something terrible, shocking happens that snaps you out of the distraction of your day-to-day life. And you start to notice more around you. I mean, I even noticed people, like what was going on with strangers. I started talking to strangers all the time. And those were beautiful moments. Like I got on the phone with T-Mobile to take Mark off my account. And I ended up having a whole conversation with a woman whose brother died in Iraq. And we had the most lovely 10-minute conversation. And this was happening all the time. And those to me are micro moments of joy. When you suddenly find this profound moment of connection, human connection with someone you hadn't known before, or you see the beauty of the mountains, or, an amazing cup of coffee.
An amazing cup of
You
coffee, or
know?
feeling grateful that you even woke up today, or for people in your life, or
Absolutely. And I think people who've been through grief will say this. They never thought until they went through it that you can hold two emotions in one moment, both the sorrow and the sadness and the joy
yeah, a
and the
lot of
love,
people, right? A
right?
lot of people don't get that, and I so resonate with
It's a
that with you.
paradox. It's a paradox, but you actually can feel both. And the good and the beautiful can pull you forward.
That's absolutely true. Jenny, I so admire you because you chose to live fully, to honor Mark by embracing new passions. You've nurtured meaningful relationships and stepped bravely into the unknown, and look at where you are. You remind us that healing is worth the effort because it opens the door back to life itself, to laughter, to hope, and to the person you're still becoming.
Yeah.
Thank you for your remarkable memoir, and I highly recommend it to everyone, called Forever Fly Free, One Woman's Story of Resilience and the Power of Hope and Love. And for this truly unforgettable, enlightening, and moving conversation, which all I can say is I want to, say, you're too far away. It's time to have some dinner together. So
I'll make it to New York. I was born in New York, so I'll make it to
There
New
you go.
Jersey.
There
It's
you go.
right next door.
You could just tell people I know a Jersey girl. I got to say hello to
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
So truly from my heart, I wish you abundant blessings throughout the rest of your life and
Oh,
your
thank
days.
you.
It's
Thank
such
you,
a pleasure to know
Irene.
you, truly.
Yeah, I feel blessed. And
Oh,
thank you so much for the positive message that you send out into the world
thank you.
with your
Thank you.
podcast series.
Thank you. Well, with what you're
Truly.
doing, even with what you do with giving the proceeds of your book to burn victims and all that, and what I'm doing by paying it forward after all the grief and everything that I went through, and
Yeah.
together we are really helping so many people. It's a blessing.
Yeah, I think the other thing I learned is to trust the universe to care for you and to show you the way, right? And so, bunch of breadcrumbs led me to you
Right.
and to be doing what I'm doing now. So,
What a blessing. Well,
yeah.
I'm going to blow you a kiss and say to be continued.
Thank you, Irene. What a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll send us off to the cloud.
Okay, goodbye. Off to the cloud.
Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. And to my cherished Grief and Rebirth podcast fans, stay tuned and see you again soon. Until next time, many blessings.